My name is Nora Bennett. I'm 29 years old. By the time my sister called my invention ridiculous across the dinner table, I had already spent 3 quiet years building it in silence. Ava gave me that cool, polished smile and said, "No one's buying your ridiculous little gadget, Nora. Stop embarrassing yourself and go back to your office job." My cousin Tyler laughed before I could lift my spoon. The sound traveled around the table, quick and mean. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just kept eating my soup. Because sometimes silence is the only thing that keeps you from saying something you'll regret before the real ending arrives. What none of them knew was that my ridiculous invention had already survived 2 tough pilot programs, a corporate security review, and a week of negotiations that left me barely sleeping. They still pictured me tinkering in my tiny Chicago apartment after work, chasing a fantasy between spreadsheets and reheated coffee. They thought a few laughs could break me. They were wrong. The next morning, when the buyout hit the news, my phone exploded with calls, texts, and apologies that came far too late. 3 years earlier, I was working a safe operations job at a mid-sized logistics company in Chicago, the kind of stable position my family respected. On paper, everything looked fine. In reality, I spent lunch breaks sketching ideas on the back of reports, and nights obsessing over one problem: small businesses getting destroyed by security failures they couldn't afford to fix. Big companies had expensive tools, and everyone else was stuck with weak passwords and clunky systems. I wanted to build something simple yet strong enough to protect them when things went wrong. That idea became LatchCore, a compact authentication device with a lightweight dashboard that helped small teams secure accounts, manage access quickly, and recover fast during attacks without needing a full IT department. My early prototypes were ugly. One overheated, another nearly wiped my own files. But I kept going. The hardest part wasn't the tech. It was the people who smiled while quietly treating my ambition like a silly phase. My younger sister Ava was the polished one in the family. She worked in brand strategy and believed anything without a big company name or fancy title wasn't real. My cousin Tyler was louder about it. As once he learned I was building hardware at night, he turned me into the family joke. "Here comes Silicon Valley," he'd say, even though I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with a folding desk beside my bed. At first, I tried explaining my idea carefully, thinking clarity would earn respect. That was a mistake. The more I described it, the more they acted like I was giving an unwanted TED Talk during dinner. My parents weren't cruel, but fear shaped their words. My mom would say, "I just don't want you disappointed." My dad added, "You're smart enough not to gamble your future." Then came the night that changed everything. I had taken 2 vacation days to run a live pilot with a local accounting firm. It worked well enough that the managing partner was surprised. Excited, I brought dessert to family dinner and shared the news. And Ava cut me off before I could finish. "So we're still doing this? The same invention you're losing sleep over instead of building a real career?" Tyler laughed. Someone joked about me ending up on a reality show for failed inventors. I stood in the kitchen afterward, rinsing a clean plate, staring at the faucet. That night, I decided to stop bringing my dreams into rooms that had already decided they were entertainment. From then on, I went quiet. I kept my day job, then quietly moved to part-time. I named the company LatchCore because security should hold when everything else falls apart. With my college friend Priya helping on the software, we tested every failure scenario we could imagine. After months of late nights and cheap takeout, we landed our first paying pilots. And then a struggling chain of dental offices signed on after a ransomware scare. Their success brought more clients. Growth finally felt real. I stopped explaining. I stopped announcing. Silence became my best strategy. By the Sunday family dinner, Archon Systems had already sent a near-final term sheet to acquire LatchCore. The number was life-changing. No one in my family knew. I arrived calm, carrying a bottle of wine. Soup was served. Small talk drifted until my dad mentioned an article about small business cybersecurity. Ava smiled into her spoon. "Oh, are we still doing that little device thing?" Tyler snorted. "No one's buying your ridiculous invention, Nora. Stop embarrassing yourself and stick to your office job." The table gave that awkward half-laugh. I kept eating my soup, spoon steady. Ava continued. "I'm just trying to save you from wasting your prime years on something uncertain." I set my spoon down and looked at her. "You don't need to save me, and you really shouldn't assume you know what's happening in my life just because I stopped explaining it to you." The next morning at 8:12 a.m., my attorney called. The board approved. We signed by late morning. At 1:47 p.m., Archon issued the press release. By afternoon, headlines read, "Archon Systems acquires LatchCore in strategic move." My phone exploded. Calls and texts poured in from my mom, dad, Ava, Tyler, and cousins who hadn't spoken to me in months. Tyler texted, "I always knew you were smart." I laughed out loud in my apartment. The next day, my mother asked me to come over. The whole family was there. I walked in and said, "You all had a lot to say on Sunday, and now seems like a good time to finish that conversation." My parents apologized in their own cautious ways. Tyler gave a weak, "I was just joking" excuse. Then Ava stepped forward, arms folded. "I didn't know there was some secret acquisition happening. You made it sound like you were just tinkering." I held her gaze. "Every time I shared anything, you treated it like theater. You enjoyed deciding what was serious and what was embarrassing." She tried to spin it as being realistic. I answered, "You weren't being realistic. You were trying to keep me small because that version of me made you comfortable." The room went silent. Ava finally snapped, "So now you're going to punish me forever because you got rich?" I shook my head. "This isn't about money, it's about respect. And you only came looking for mine after the press release." Before I left, I told my parents I loved them and would speak with them separately, but I needed distance from everyone else. In the weeks that followed, the acquisition closed. I paid off debts, upgraded my life, and started leading the integration at Archon. The deepest change wasn't the money. It was finally stopping the urge to make myself smaller so other people would feel comfortable. Ava called a few times. When I finally answered, she sounded careful. She apologized, not perfectly, but real enough. Our relationship is now more honest, with clearer boundaries. Tyler never really apologized. I moved on anyway. Today, when I speak to young founders, I tell them, doubt from strangers is manageable, but doubt from family cuts deeper, because it uses voices you once trusted. The strongest response isn't revenge or explanation. It's building anyway, in silence, with discipline, until your results speak louder than their laughter ever could. Some of the same people who laughed will later clap. You don't owe them front row seats to your becoming. That quiet dinner where my sister mocked my invention ended with a buyout headline the very next day. But the real victory wasn't the money or the news. It was building a life that no longer needed permission from people committed to misunderstanding it.